The atmosphere was already unusually tense before the cameras rolled, a heaviness settling over the studio as if everyone subconsciously anticipated that the conversation between Stephen Colbert and Prince Harry would be anything but ordinary, and while the audience cheered and applauded with trained enthusiasm, behind the curtain, the prince stood calm yet unreadable, a subtle storm brewing behind his eyes that the seasoned producers didn't pick up on until it was far too late. As Stephen welcomed him to the stage with his trademark grin and a quip about royal family scandals being more entertaining than cable news, Harry smiled politely, the kind of smile that wasn't quite agreement but more like restraint, and from the moment he sat down, he exuded an energy that was simultaneously magnetic and guarded, as though he had brought every ounce of experience from surviving a hostile press with him onto that stage. The interview began smoothly enough, with questions about Harry's latest memoir, the charity work, his new podcast focusing on mental health, topics he had rehearsed answers for 1,000 times, but then Colbert, emboldened by the crowd's laughter and perhaps a miscalculated sense of rapport, pivoted sharply and asked, "So tell me, do you think your mother would approve of all this?" Referencing Diana in a tone that tried to sound thoughtful but landed like a blunt instrument. The air was sucked from the room instantly, a sharp silence replacing the laughter, and Harry's eyes froze for a millisecond before he replied, measured but cold, "I don't think it's appropriate to use my mother as entertainment fodder for applause." Colbert, caught off guard but trying to keep control, chuckled nervously and said, "Come on, you've written about her, she's part of the story," and Harry's expression darkened as he leaned forward slightly, the royal restraint giving way to raw irritation. "There's a difference between telling my story and having it mocked for ratings," he said, his voice low but cutting through the room like a razor, and though the audience laughed less enthusiastically, Colbert pressed on, "Look, I think Americans are just curious. You've turned your life into a brand, surely you expect tough questions." That was the moment the dynamic shifted irreversibly, as Harry removed his microphone earpiece in full view of the camera, and in a voice that was calm but steely, he replied, "I didn't come here to be ambushed. I came here to speak as a human being, not a headline," standing up slowly while Colbert, visibly flustered, tried to salvage the moment by saying, "Prince Harry, wait, let's not turn this into a walkout, it's just a conversation." But Harry had already started to leave, and as he walked off the stage to stunned gasps from the audience, a producer frantically gestured to cut to commercial, the screen going black before the situation could spiral further on live television. In the aftermath, the incident trended globally within minutes, hashtags like #HarryWalkout, #ColbertClash, and #RoyalExit flooded social media, with commentators divided sharply between those who believed Harry was thin-skinned and those who argued he had every right to shut down invasive commentary disguised as late-night banter. Colbert addressed the matter with a terse statement the next day, framing it as an unfortunate misunderstanding and insisting he had meant no disrespect, but insiders leaked reports suggesting CBS was furious about the incident, having anticipated the interview as a ratings peak, only for it to become a PR headache. Meanwhile, Harry remained silent publicly for days before posting a short video on his foundation's page where he addressed the situation indirectly, stating, "Every human being deserves dignity in dialogue, especially when discussing trauma and loss. I've spoken my truth, and I will continue to, but not at the cost of integrity." That video garnered millions of views in hours and triggered a larger cultural conversation around the boundaries of celebrity interviews, with mental health professionals and media critics alike weighing in on the ethical line between curiosity and intrusion. Colbert, usually untouchable in his satirical throne, found himself facing criticism from unexpected corners, including fellow comedians and journalists who argued that his style, usually clever and warm, had crossed into territory that felt entitled and dismissive. Rumors circulated that the two camps, Colbert's production team and Harry's communications advisors, were exchanging heated correspondence behind the scenes, with Harry's team reportedly rejecting all invitations for a follow-up or reconciliation segment. As late-night hosts across networks subtly referenced the incident with jokes or indirect comments, the public appetite for clarity only grew, but Harry kept his silence, appearing instead at events related to veterans' mental health and education reform, drawing attention away from spectacle and back toward substance. Colbert eventually invited a royal historian onto his show to contextualize the royal drama in a segment that felt more like damage control than curiosity, and though the ratings remained strong, there was a noticeable shift in audience perception, with some longtime fans calling for more tact and empathy in interviews. In time, the story became legend, another moment in the ongoing saga of Prince Harry's post-palace journey, another example of his refusal to be handled, commodified, or stripped of emotional autonomy for the sake of entertainment. And though the walkout faded from the top headlines as newer controversies emerged, its echo lingered, a warning to talk show hosts, producers, and publicists alike that not every guest is willing to laugh off a wound, and not every moment can be controlled once the cameras start rolling. For Prince Harry, the clash only solidified his position as a man unwilling to play by the old rules, and for Stephen Colbert, it became a humbling reminder that even in a career built on words, the wrong ones can change everything. In the weeks following the dramatic walkout, the tremors of that televised moment refused to dissipate, instead building into a cultural flashpoint as networks, podcasts, news outlets, and social commentators dissected every word, every glance, every pause, trying to understand the deeper implications of a royal figure rejecting the polished, performative nature of American media in real time. And as the dust settled, a deeper war quietly began to play out, not in studios or on stages but in reputations, narratives, and the growing chasm between celebrity and dignity. While Colbert's team worked overtime to control the fallout, leaking stories to entertainment outlets that Harry had arrived, defensive, uncooperative, and scripted, Harry's allies struck back by publishing anonymous op-eds in major publications that laid bare the commodification of trauma and how the media manipulates authenticity into content without consent. And somewhere between the glossy headlines and the angry comment sections, the public found itself being forced to take sides, with debate shows turning the incident into fodder for heated arguments about cancel culture, royal privilege, media ethics, and the power dynamics embedded in every televised interaction. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, CBS executives held tense meetings about whether to extend or trim Colbert's creative control, privately furious that what should have been an easy win turned into a controversy. And though Stephen remained publicly calm, smiling through monologues and making tongue-in-cheek jokes like, "Next time, I'll invite a duke who brings tea, not drama," he reportedly grew agitated with producers who questioned his handling of sensitive topics, especially given how Colbert had long styled himself as the thinking man's host, the one who asked sharp questions but with warmth and wit, a blend that had worked until it collided with someone like Harry who refused to play along. Across the ocean, British tabloids exploded with renewed frenzy, interpreting the walkout as another example of Harry's fragility, or entitlement, while ironically proving his point by turning a moment of emotional honesty into an international media circus. And back in California, Meghan Markle stayed silent publicly but reportedly told close friends that the interview had been a trap, dressed in charm, and that they would no longer engage with shows that didn't offer editorial transparency beforehand. Despite the chaos, Harry found a new kind of clarity in the fallout, realizing that public vulnerability was not a weakness but a mirror, and that mirror had exposed more about the culture of entertainment than it had about him. And within a month, he appeared in a candid sit-down interview with an independent YouTube journalist known for long-form, uncut conversations, where he calmly detailed what happened, why he left, and how the media often disguises judgment as curiosity. That appearance broke the internet in a different way, not with shock or scandal but with resonance. Viewers described feeling seen, heard, and moved, and unlike the Colbert segment, it sparked not outrage but introspection, leading to online discussions about how viewers themselves consume content and whether they support hosts who provoke pain for profit. Colbert, recognizing the shift, invited media psychologists to his show for a self-aware segment on how trauma is handled in public discourse, a clever way of both addressing the backlash and trying to steer the narrative back into his control. But the damage to his moral authority lingered, a subtle bruise that wouldn't heal quickly. Meanwhile, Prince Harry pivoted further into advocacy, launching a new global platform centered around ethical storytelling, trauma-informed journalism, and giving public figures a space to speak freely without manipulation. Backed by nonprofit funding and a slate of upcoming episodes featuring war veterans, whistleblowers, and human rights advocates, it quickly became clear that he was building something more lasting than a momentary headline. Industry insiders began to note how Harry had, perhaps unintentionally, disrupted the old template for talk show interviews, setting a new bar for accountability and depth, while younger celebrities and activists started publicly citing him as a model for setting boundaries with press appearances. This influence rippled subtly but unmistakably. Other public figures began walking out of interviews when they sensed bad faith, and PR teams rewrote their guidelines for media engagement, no longer treating late-night shows as automatic publicity wins but weighing the psychological cost against the promotional gain. As for Colbert, he continued his show with the same professionalism, but he noticeably changed his tone in future interviews with sensitive guests, less barbed jokes, more open-ended questions, and a new tendency to reference that night with Harry as a reminder that we all have blind spots, a phrase he used more than once, as if trying to exorcise the ghost of that moment from the airwaves. Despite attempts by tabloids and cable pundits to drag out the drama, the narrative slowly transitioned from scandal to reflection, and Prince Harry's refusal to allow his trauma to be entertainment became not just a viral story but a pivotal case study taught in journalism courses, media ethics seminars, and even PR boot camps, with professors citing the incident as a watershed moment for how power works in public conversation. Meghan and Harry, now further estranged from royal institutions but more rooted in their own identity than ever, leaned into this new paradigm, hosting dialogues with voices often silenced or caricatured in mainstream platforms, and in doing so, they carved out a strange but powerful third space, neither palace nor studio, but something that lived between empathy and courage. And while Stephen Colbert would eventually rebuild his stature, reclaiming his comedic grace and re-establishing trust with viewers, the phrase, "Don't pull a Colbert on Harry," entered the industry lexicon as shorthand for crossing invisible emotional lines with someone who has endured too much. The memory of that walkout, though no longer fresh, persisted like a watermark, subtle but permanent, on how interviews would be conducted in the years to come, a testament to one man standing up, quite literally, for the right not to be reduced, not even for a laugh, and in that single moment of defiance, the entire machinery of celebrity storytelling was forced to reckon with the truth that not every story belongs to the audience, and not every person can be handled like a guest with a punchline.